Howdy folks, it's Meandering Mike in the Man Cave of Madness, and today we are presenting the game Wagram. This is part of the Napoleon At War Quad pack from SPI. Here's the standard rules, and those were the specific rules. So some of you might not know, but I was searching for my copy of the Napoleon At War Quad, and I have 13 Banker's Box of SPI Flat. Search file, couldn't find it, so I had to order a new copy, and this has arrived. In the meantime, I did have a folio edition copy of the game Jena Arstadt, so I've got 3 videos of those. If you haven't seen those, you can take a look. You can find them in my playlist called Hexagon Alley. That's a whole bunch of videos about various Hex Encounter classic games. So we are doing Wagram today. We're going to start with a how to play. We're going to do a quick one because I have covered that before in the Arstadt, but focusing on the specific exclusive rules to this game, and we will talk a little bit about the victory conditions for this game. That's one I think I did in the Arstadt. I hadn't really paid attention to the victory conditions until I was halfway through playing. And, you know, that sort of threw me off a little bit in terms of, it would have been nice to look at those at a time. So I'm going to do that 3 video format again. I'll do one how to play here and try to keep it short, and then do an actual playthrough, and then have an after action review video. So let's dig in. So standard rules for Napoleon at War. Combat strength, movement allowance. There are 3 different unit types: infantry, cavalry, artillery. Now, unlike some Napoleonic games, the infantry and cavalry don't have much distinction. In most cases, there are no special rules for cavalry charges, no special rules for like retreat before combat. In this particular system, there's no combined arm rule. So the only real difference in this between infantry and cavalry is in this particular scenario, there's a special rule about the stream that runs along here. So I'll go ahead and cover that now. This streams normally in this game system cost 2 additional movement points to cross. And the attacker, or the defender, is doubled if all attackers are attacking across the stream or bridges. In this game, this particular stream is much steeper banks, and so artillery and cavalry may not cross except at bridges, and the cavalry may not attack across. Artillery can bombard across still, but they can't cross. Same with that. So infantry can cross normally, so it would cost 2 additional movement points to cross. Forest normally costs 2, so if a unit were here, an infantry here, moving to here, it'd take an entire 4 movement points to cross the stream, adding 2 to move into there. Boom. All right. So that is the gist of movement rules. The terrain effects are half for a road, 1 movement point to enter a town if you're not going along the road, 2 to enter forest, plus 2 to cross the stream. And in this particular game, infantry only, there are these slope hex sides. There's a downhill side and an uphill side. When you cross up, it costs 1 extra movement point, not along, not down. And if you're attacking up a slope where all attackers are going up, the defender will be doubled. But if you have some guy, flanking, then you don't get any benefit. So that's it for the terrain, movement, combat. Okay, so there are zones of controls in this game. When you move next to an enemy, you must stop. You may not voluntarily leave zone of control. It means if you're in a zone of control at the beginning of your turn, you may not exit. You may never move from zone to zone. During combat, if you're in enemy zones of control, you must attack with every unit that you have that's in a zone of control, and you must attack every enemy unit that are in your zone of controls. Okay, so it's mandatory combat. The only way you can leave a zone of control is if you get retreated or they get retreated, or they get eliminated. Obviously, if you get eliminated, that's a bad way to leave the zone of control. But all right, so that's the simplicity of the system. You must engage in combat. You must engage all units with all your units. How you do that when there's a big front, where people collide, you have your option of how to team up and attack, as long as you attack every enemy unit and you attack with every unit that are adjacent, that are in zone of control. Now, artillery units have a 2 hex range that they can bombard with, okay? If an artillery is next to another unit, they must attack normally. They are engaged. If they're at 2 hexes away and bombarding, one of the advantages is the artillery will not be affected by adverse result when it's attacking from 2 away. So if you get, bad die roll and you get an attacker eliminated or attacker retreat or an exchange, but the artillery is shooting at range, they are not affected. Now, the combat results table, which is here on the back, it has retreats, attacker retreat, defender retreat, attacker eliminated, defender eliminated, and exchange. Word about exchange is the defender is eliminated during an exchange. The attacker must lose an equal amount of strength. Now, this is based on the strength on the counter. So any doubling that is done from slope or stream or town, well, it affects the overall odds. It does not affect the losses. So when the defender is killed by an exchange, the attacker must lose equal face value that the defender lost. Okay. Now, they must lose that amount or more. If you have, for example, an 8 strength infantry unit attacking, say, a 2 strength artillery, or, I don't think there's a 2 strength infantry unit, but there's 2 strength cavalry. Your 4-to-1 odds, you could roll a 6 and get an exchange. In that 4-to-1, if you're attacking with an 8 strength unit against a 2 and you roll the exchange, you're going to have to lose as the attacker your entire unit. Even though the defender only lost 2, you have to equal or exceed. So that's a scary thing when you're taking with a very big unit against a small unit where you can get these exchanges. If you were attacking with, say, a 6 strength infantry and a 2 strength cavalry against a 2 strength cavalry, and you got the exchange, you could just lose your 2 strength guys. So attacking with multiple smaller units sometimes is good if you're worried about getting exchange. Now, a final point here about the rules is, well, there's 2 things. One is, this is an odds ratio. You always round in the favor of the defender, okay? So if, for example, you have 7 strength points attacking 4, you don't have enough for a 2-to-1. It'd be down to a 1-to-1. You need 8 full strength points to attack a 4 to get a 2-to-1. 7's not enough, all right? The other thing on here is you can voluntarily reduce the odds. So if you had enough to get a 4-to-1 and you don't want to risk that exchange, so an example of the 8 strength infantry attacking the 2 strength cavalry, you could roll at 3-to-1 instead. And that way, if you roll a 6, you don't get exchange, you just get an attacker retreat. Now look at this in the middle. This is pretty bloodless. Like, man, how do you get kills if you have to get way up here for DEs and exchanges? Well, surrounding units. If you have to retreat, you must retreat 1 space. The preference is you have to retreat into an empty space that there's no enemy zones of control on. Okay, if you can't do that, but you can retreat into a space where there's no zone of control, but a friendly unit's there, you can bump out the friendly unit. You may never retreat into an enemy zone control. And friendly units do not negate zones of control. So if you got, 2 units and they're sort of both surrounded and this guy has to retreat, he can't retreat through this friendly unit. It doesn't negate zones of control if they both have zones of control around them, okay? So if you have to retreat, and this includes it when you're attacking, if you're sort of like surrounded and you're trying to attack your way out and you're going to attack a retreat and you have nowhere to retreat, you're dead. So you're trying to surround people. So if they leave a gap, a weakness in their flank, and you can get in there and surround them and you can cause them retreat, they can die. Or what often happens is you have a big front where there's multiple units fighting multiple units, and you push one flank and maybe push another flank, and now you've surrounded this guy, and if you can retreat him, then he's dead. So that is the most common way to take losses in this system, is having to force multiple retreats to surround a guy and then kill him. All right, so that is the how to play of the system. Now, some things to note about this particular game. We already mentioned the rule about this stream, that artillery and cavalry can only cross at the bridges, and it's prohibited for them to attack across. Well, artillery can bombard, but cavalry cannot attack across the stream, only at the bridges. All right. There are some reinforcements. Okay, this is the setup locations. All the Austrian army on the board starts in specific places. I wrote on the back of these in pencil. This is a nice little technique where they set up. Okay, there are some reinforcements that come on turn 3 up here. Now, on this map, this way's north, this way's west. So turn 3 reinforcements, the Austrians on the west edge. So I wrote on the back of those guys T3 for turn 3. There's some special reinforcements. This is Archduke John. So Archduke Charles is in charge here. Archduke John is going to potentially show up here, and you have to roll for them. And so these are called the special reinforcements. So I wrote SR on the back of these guys. All right. And then the Napoleon's troops had little bivouac areas where there was a hex stated, and then say these units must be within 1 hex or 2 hex or 3 hex or whatever. So there's guys that are stated that they have to start on Lobau Island. This is how Napoleon has gotten across the Danube River through pontoon bridges onto this island and then off this island. So this was sort of the critical supply route here that he's trying to protect, because this is his way of retreat if things go bad. Okay, so these reserve artillery cannot leave the island. These other units can. And there was units that are set up around here, 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 and here. So on these guys, I just wrote the hex. So it says 0524. And in the rules, it says these units, listen, says within 3 hexes of 0524. So when you're setting up, you can set them up any way you want to within that limit. So this was in 1 hex of here, 2 of here, 2 of here, 1 and 1, etc. All right. So I didn't write the radius on the back of these. I don't have great penmanship, so I didn't want to write too much data on these. So I just wrote the hex, and you can look it up here. So free setup for these guys with these limits. These guys have to set up in these positions there. All right. Demoralization, standard demoralization in this game. The Wiener Arstadt that I played had a slightly different, where if a side got demoralized, they got a shift against them in combat. The normal thing in this game system, Napoleon at War, is if your army gets demoralized, you no longer can advance after combat. That means you can't do those bam, bam, surround and kill. If you can get around a guy, you can surround him and kill him, but you can't do advance after combats. And so that makes it much more difficult for you to eliminate units. All right, so the demoralization levels, the French is at 50 combat strength points. If they take 50 losses, they're demoralized. The Austrians are at 45. In this particular scenario of Wagram, each army can be demoralized independently. And some of the ones, it's like game ends immediately if one side demoralized, or you can demoralize enemy and that prevents you from being demoralized. But in this, they both can get demoralized. All right. So it's 14. Let's see, you can't see that. There are 14 turns in this. There are 2 night turns, and it's the standard night rules in this one, where you may not enter a zone of control during the night. If you're in a zone of control, you stay there. There's no fighting. So you're sort of locked into place if you're in zones, but you can move during the night turns. You just can't enter a zone of control. All right, so there's 14 of these turns total, and at the end of the 14 turns, you're comparing relative victory point scores. So this is the stage where I'm going to analyze the victory points here. We're going to spend at least a few minutes doing that, because it's kind of important. And I didn't do it for Wiener Arstadt until after the fact. So you score 1 victory point for each unit that you eliminate of the enemy, no matter how they die. So if you get a DE against them, you're going to score the points. If you go and attack someone at bad odds and get an attacker eliminated, the enemy is going to get points for that. And in exchange, whichever guys get eliminated on both sides, you sort of swap them. You give the dead guys to the opponent so they can keep a pile and keep track of how many points they've earned. So that is the way to score victory points for eliminations. It's per strength point on the counter. Now, both sides also have some geographical objectives. The Austrians, if they can capture Aspern, Essling, or Gross Enzerdorf. These towns are worth big points. I think it's 25, 30, and 35. Yeah, that's a huge amount of points. Let me double check those numbers. Oh, yes. 25, 30, and 35. So the instant they can get a unit into these, bam, they score those points. Also, at the end of turn 14, if they still have a unit in there, they score those points again. So that would be like a major French boo-boo to let the Austrians in there. So obviously the French are going to advance and protect these, but that prevents the French from, like, say, throwing everything this way and not defending their background. That would be a major boo-boo. So this gives the Austrians some incentive to come forward, potentially threaten this supply line, because here's, again, Lobau Island, okay? The French have a geographic objective, and that is the Russbach Heights. This slope here, this highlands, the Russbach Heights, at the end of the game, on turn 14, for every French strength point that's on the Russbach Heights, they score 1 point. So if they can smash their way up here, get up here. So it doesn't mean in this particular game, they don't have to actually take Wagram, even though it's the name of the battle, the focus was there. But technically, in this scenario, you do not have to take Wagram. All right, you can come through here, storm the heights, as long as you're protecting here. So between each side eliminating units, you're going to score points. Austrians' chance to take these. French on occupied heights. There's one more way that the Austrians can score points, and that is they can exit units off that west edge. Remember, this is north and that's west. Okay, now, yes, they could start exiting right away. Now, that wouldn't be smart. If they exited all those things early, then the French don't have to worry about their backfield and could throw everything here. So the main reason you do this is at the end of the game, the units that are up there, the Austrians can go off the map. It costs 1 movement. You have to move up to the edge and spend 1 movement to move off, okay? You can't retreat off that edge. So if the French are attacking up this way, trying to eliminate those guys, and they're pinning them in the corner, the Austrians, for every unit that they're losing, that's giving points to the French. So they may, as preservation, exit the map instead, getting themselves some points. So that is an option where the Austrians might leave early or wait till the very end, and the units that are up there can exit off and they can get some points. So elimination points, territorial points, preservation escape points there. So what happens at the end when whoever has the most victory points wins. However, the French must have at least 75 victory points total. If they do not score 75, doesn't matter how much more that they've got than the Austrians, they lose. They must score 75 points. That aside, then you do a ratio. If one side has twice or more the victory points, that's a decisive victory. All right? If you have 50% more than the enemy, that is a substantial victory. So if the French score 100 points and the Austrians only score 50, 100 is double. That would be a substantial victory. If the French had their minimum of 75 and the Austrians had 50 victory points, the French could win because they have 75 or more, and it would be 50% more than the Austrians. That would be, instead of a decisive victory, a substantial victory. And if, say, for example, the Austrians had 51 points or more and the French got their 75, the French don't have double or 50% more. They just be a majority, okay? So that's considered a marginal victory. All right, so that's it. That's the goal. The French must score 75 points. Whoever gets more otherwise, there's killing, there's territory preservation. There it is. That is how to play Wagram and the discussion of the implication of the victory point conditions, the victory conditions. And so we're going to stop this here. We're going to do another video of a how to play. We're able to keep this under just barely under 20 minutes. Now we're going to go over before I finish here, but the playthrough will be a little longer. I will not play every single turn. I'll do certain key points where there's interesting battles and such. And then after that, we'll do like an after action review of the progress of the game, etc. So to all folks out there, thank you for watching, and subscribe if you haven't already. It's free. And as I say, take care of your games because they'll take care of you, hopefully. Ciao, y'all.